I am Nic Rohloff, and we are doing a Miami Dolphins Q&A here on this episode of Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. Love answering some of your questions surrounding the offseason on the Miami Dolphins. But before we get into some of these questions from our Tuesday live show, make sure you're following us on Instagram. And if you do not get a question on today's show, you can always ask us a question over on IG, whether it is in our DMs, whether it's on our posts and reels. Dolphins Today IG is our handle. We post short-form content, photos, other stuff as well in between our videos here on YouTube. So if you want wall-to-wall 365 coverage on the Dolphins, follow us on Instagram. First question coming in from S. Gazer1. Do you think wide receiver Kiren Lacy will go to jail? That's the wide receiver from LSU. I like Texas wide receiver Golden in the third or fourth. So a couple questions here. We'll answer both of them. One, I don't want to say anything about Lacy until I know the full story, but I will be honest, it does not look good for Kiren Lacy at this point. We'll let the facts come out of the situation. We'll let the justice system do its job, but as things currently stand, I probably would not take the risk of drafting Kiren Lacy in this upcoming draft. I don't think he's talented enough to warrant the risk that would come with him. So I am kind of out on Lacy. When it comes to Golden from Texas, I think he's ultimately going to go in the first round. Wide receivers always get drafted higher than what they probably should be, and I see a lot of draft experts already start to talk about Golden being one of the top wide receivers in the draft. I think I saw it was Daniel Jeremiah put out a tweet earlier this week that said, I just finished the tape on Golden, and he's my number one wide receiver in the class. I wouldn't go that far. I would probably still have it be Tate McMillan out of Arizona. I think he is the best wide receiver in the class, but it's a weak wide receiver group, so I think Golden may go way higher than expected in the first round or early second round at bare minimum, and I just think that kind of price point for Miami will be too high to draft him in this upcoming draft, so I don't think Golden will ultimately be an option for Miami this go around. Anthony with a question. What are your thoughts on this? We re-signed Jevon Holland, draft Malachi Starks, and Kevin Winston. Malachis are strong? I don't know who that is. I don't know who you're talking about, Malachis. I know Kevin Winston. He's the safety from Penn State. Kevin is free. Jevon is rover. All right, so I'm a little confused. Oh, you're saying... Oh, gotcha. All right, I think I got this now. Jevon's a rover. Kevin is the free. Malachi Starks is the... I got you. All right, we're good. No. Listen, I do not think that both of them would be drafted. If you bring back Jevon Holland, I think you will only draft one safety in the first 2 days of the draft. And I think both Kevin Winston and Starks will be in the first two rounds. Well, one, I think Starks is going to be top 15 pick because I think Miami at 13 might be as far as Malachi Starks falls. Kevin Winston Jr. out of Penn State, I really like him. Top 5 safety in the class. I'd probably put him either 3 or 4. Him and Ramsey from USC is probably in that range. I have Xavier Watts at number 2 at this point in the process. I think Winston's going to be a second round, maybe early third round pick. And is it worth Miami drafting 2 guys in the first 3 rounds if they sign Jevon Holland? If they didn't sign Jevon Holland and they just drafted Starks and Winston, all right, maybe we could have a conversation about that. But with Patrick McMorris coming back in the draft as well, after being 6th round last year, I expect him to be your third safety. So if you bring back Holland, you're probably only drafting 1 safety. If you don't bring back Holland, maybe you draft 2, but I'd probably sign 1 veteran in free agency, draft another in the first 2 rounds, and then have McMorris be your safety number 3. Thanks for the question, Anthony. It was actually a pretty good one. It just took me a second to realize what you were asking. Be honest with me. Do you trust Chris Grier as the GM of the Miami Dolphins? I have a pretty decent feeling about how you will feel about this, but let me know. Do you trust Chris Grier? Type T for trade or D for don't. Or trust, Jesus. Cameron with a question. How do you feel about them drafting Tate Ratledge out of Georgia or Tyler Booker out of Alabama or both interior offensive linemen here? I'll talk about Tyler Booker because I like him a lot more than Ratledge from Georgia. I think Booker is ultimately going to become a first-round pick, and he is, I think, worthy of being a first-round pick. If he fell to the second, I would do everything in my power to trade up and draft Tyler Booker. The thing with the interior offensive line is interesting. As big as of a need as it is for the Miami Dolphins, you also have to realize in the grand scheme of the NFL, offensive guards are one of the least valued positions there are. And that's actually the ironic thing. The two biggest needs for the Dolphins are safety and an offensive guard. And those are two of the least important positions in terms of like monetary value as well as draft position. Like you rarely see interior offensive linemen get selected really, really high, right? It's usually position players, quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, corners. You don't edge rushers, interior defensive linemen. You don't really see like interior offensive linemen or safeties go high that often. That's why Brian Branch out of Alabama fell late to the Lions, and they're thanking everyone for being dumb, letting him fall to him. But back on track. I really like Tyler Booker. So is 13 a little rich for Booker? Yes. And the Dolphins have a second-round pick, number 48 overall. He's probably not falling to 48. He's probably going to go anywhere between maybe 18 and 34, in my opinion. So if the Dolphins want Booker, they would either have to trade up to grab him or trade back from 13. And maybe Miami does that. Maybe one of the three guys that I would target right now in terms of being worthy of selecting at 13, that being Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas, offensive lineman, Will Campbell, LSU offensive lineman, and Malachi Starks from Georgia. If all three of those are off the board, maybe you do trade back from 13 to 18, 19, and draft Booker to be one of your starting left guard, right guards. Maybe that's a possibility. Do you think you need to draft an interior offensive lineman this upcoming April? Maybe Booker's that guy, but I don't know if it's worth it in the first round. All right, we got more questions to answer here in just a second, but we are sponsored by Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's so easy to play. All you do is pick more or less on two to more player projections, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money right now on Prize Picks. It's playoff time. It's now or ever. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash. And it's so easy to play. It really is. You just pick more or less. And they also offer weekly promotions. They can lead to big payouts. Taco Tuesday is an example. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. And you're watching this on Sunday? Well, you can make a play for Monday's college football national championship game. I'll take the more than on Will Howard, half a passing yards. Free square from Prize Picks. They do this often. Take advantage of it while it lasts. I'll pair that up with less than on both Jeremiah Smith receiving yards and Riley Leonard passing yards for a pretty solid three-player entry for the Natty in college football. Just an example of how you can play. Download the app. Make sure you use code CLNS when creating an account to get $50 instantly after you place your first play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Legendary Chad Jones, who is in the building, saying, should they draft the big tight end in the draft a big tight end, and then free agency 2 guards, draft rest for defense and QB. So you're basically talking about drafting the #1 tight end. That's the Penn State guy, Tyler Warren. He's a very talented guy. I've seen a lot of Dolphins content creators and reporters talk about the idea of adding him to this roster. I mean, it'd be fun. It'd be a potential best pick available. Him and Jonnu Smith would be an elite tight end duo in 2025. And then Jonnu Smith, who signed a 2-year contract with Miami, 1 year left. Ultimately, his contract expires. Then you just have Warren as your tight end of the future. But I just think that would be a misusage of assets. I think using that 13th pick, one of the more needed positions, aka safety or offensive line, is more valuable. If you want to get a complimentary tight end to Jonnu Smith, I think you could do that in the later rounds of the NFL draft or sign one in free agency. I've yet to really look at free agent tight ends to this point. But when you talk about guards, there are some guards out there. Will Fries from the Indianapolis Colts is someone I really have an eye on. You could look at Mekhi Becton from Philly, but I'm a little skeptical of that one. Trey Smith, probably the most prized offensive guard, going to get likely a record-setting contract that will exceed Robert Hunt's from last season with Carolina. Listen, you're going to have to fill a lot of needs this year in free agency and the draft, but I would not use one of the top picks on Tyler Warren. I just think that would be a misuse of assets. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we'll cover you on the latest Miami Dolphins news, rumors, and more all off season long. Hit that sub button and join the channel because we will have you covered with everything you need to know around the draft, free agency, and trade rumors this off season. Mac, thanks for the nice comment, my friend. Do you think the NFL will ever realign the divisions and pit us in the AFC South like we should be since they are giving us more late home games, taking away from our home advantage? I always do laugh at the fact the Dolphins are in the AFC East. I mean, they're on the East Coast, but if we're just having a sit at the bar type of conversation about realignment in the NFL, how can there legitimately be an AFC South division, but you do not have the most southern AFC team in it? Like, really think about that. The Dolphins are the most southern team in the AFC, and they're not in the AFC South. It's kind of funny to think about, if we're going to be honest. But, hey, if they ever realign, sure, they should be in the AFC South, that's for sure. It would help Miami, not having to travel to Buffalo, Foxborough, and New York every frickin' year and potentially be cold weather games late in the season. It'd certainly help Miami. Or there's always the solution of just building a roster and building a culture in Miami that is not afraid of playing in the cold, because if you play in the postseason, you may have to travel there anyway in January. So guess what? How about you just build a physical football team that can win those type of games? What say you? What position should Miami target in the first round of the NFL Draft? Maybe you're like Chad Jones earlier and you wanted Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State. I would be in the camp of answering this question with either safety or offensive line, but let me know your thoughts down below. Frank O'Connor with a $20 super chat. Is there any way Chat Sports as a group can do a massive mock draft, 1 or 2 rounds? Also, do you think we can get Starks and Jaxson Dart in the draft? I'll tell you what, I'll pitch that idea to the Chat Sports people. I don't know how it would be possible. Every single team is almost covered here at the channel or at the company of Chat Sports. Every single person makes a pick in the first round. We do a massive video. I think that would actually be a lot of fun, Frank. I'm going to pitch that idea. Shout out to you. And if we do it, I'm giving you credit. But to answer the second question, Malachi Starks is the number one guy I want. I'll say this right now. We'll do more scouting. We'll look more into it as the draft process gets closer to April. But the safety from Georgia is my number one guy. I'd probably put the 2 offensive linemen, Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks Jr., as number 2 and 3 in whatever order. Have to look at them more. But Starks fills that safety position either alongside Jevon Holland, replacing Jevon Holland. He covers. He tackles, he's physical, and you can't really go wrong with Georgia secondary members. Like, seriously, just think about some of the ones that come out of Georgia lately. Like Kamari Lassiter, instant impact player for Houston. Bullard has been instant impact. Kaylee Ringo, like so many Georgia secondary players have succeeded in the NFL. So why not take another one, especially at a position of need? When talking about Jaxson Dart, I like Jaxson Dart a lot. Right now, I think he'd be my QB3 in the draft. Doesn't say a lot considering this quarterback class is one of the worst we've seen in a while. Probably on par with 2022. Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, and the crew. Boy, were they bad. This one's equally as bad as, in my opinion. Top end's probably slightly better with Ward and Sanders, but the middle rounds, oof, 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 just like it was in 2022. I like Dart. 3rd round is probably where I would take him. So I think the Dolphins will miss out on him because I think he ultimately gets drafted in the top 64 picks, but I would not deem that worthy for Miami. All right, that's going to do it for today's video. Appreciate everyone coming in and asking some Miami Dolphins questions. Always love doing these type of shows. In season, it's harder to do. In the off season, it's fun. Get your thoughts. We could have a conversation about how things are going in the off season for Miami. So if you want more on that, make sure you follow us on Instagram at Dolphins Today IG, because maybe we can answer and have more of a conversation over there.